Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking at yet another Tier 9 Premium that just came out. And a prime example of why the English language can be absolutely baffling to somebody who's not a native speaker. I'm going to give you a minute. How do you think you pronounce that thing if you didn't know it already? Any ideas? Well, this is the Marlborough. So, a British Tier 9 Premium battleship. The Marlborough didn't exist. She is sort of loosely based, from what I can tell, around what the British were planning to do with the King George V class. Because the British were trying to fit, in one of the King George V designs, were trying to fit 3 of the quadruple turrets onto that thing. And that is sort of what we're seeing here, taken to the extreme. They couldn't fit it because the King George V was a treaty battleship, so they just didn't have enough battleship to put all these turrets into. so the Marlborough is vastly larger, which means we're going to start out with a bunch of comparisons here and see how that looks. We'll actually start out comparing the Marlborough with the King George V for a reason. We'll get to that reason. First thing that stands out, and just like all the other premium British battleships, she gets a precise aiming instead of the rapid reload that we get on the tech tree line. The hull is more or less a King George V with 10,000 more hit points. Really? That's what that thing is. Speed's a little bit better. Maneuverability is a little bit worse, except for the rudder shift. The turn time is actually pretty good for a thing that size. But this is where it gets really interesting, because these are 356mm L45 Mark 7 guns. Now you could be tempted to say, well, hang on a minute, the King George V has the Mark II guns. Well, no, she does not. Okay, slight tangent here. Because the in-game description of the guns on the King George V is wrong. These are not Mark II guns. There were a 356mm or 14-inch Mark II gun, but that was a monitor gun from the First World War, which was actually made in the US, that the British purchased. And so that is not what this is. These were the Mark VII guns, and the Mark VII guns are successors of these earlier guns, but these were actually designed and manufactured in the UK and fitted onto the King George V class. They were, however, sitting in turrets, and the turret mounts, there are 2 turret mounts on the King George V. There is the twin mount, which is indeed the Mark II turret mount with the Mark VII gun in it. And there's the quadruple mount, which is the Mark III turret mount with the Mark VII guns in it, which is what we're seeing here at Tier 9 in the Marlborough. Only that we don't, because if you look at the stats, the Marlborough's guns are reloading at the same speed, have a slightly better range, but have noticeably worse damage output, and only have 4 degrees per second turret traverse. Why? Search me. But in return you get 16 of them, so it's kind of like a Lyon situation, sort of, but this is a Tier 9 ship, right? So let's keep comparing before we get into anything else. We've got secondaries which have slightly better range and do slightly more damage, but it's really not particularly effectful. The AA is, for all intents and purposes, identical, given that the King George V is in Tier 7, and this thing gets matched up against midweights is not a good sign. And the surface detection is, like in most British battleships, relatively good. Not quite as good as a Tier 7, but still not terrible. So let's compare the Marlborough to the Lion, the actual tech tree version of the British battleships that we find here at this tier. And while she doesn't have particularly better armor plating or worse armor plating in many regards, the guns on the Lion are noticeably bigger. Well, you don't get as many of them. You only get 9 instead of 16. But still, these are quite big guns. And even these 419mm guns have a better turret traverse, for some reason, than the Marlborough. Lastly, I would like to draw your attention to the Azuma. Why are we looking at the Azuma? The Azuma is not a battleship. Well, sort of notish, but the Azuma is a supercarrier. And the Azuma's 310mm HE shells are, for all intents and purposes, pretty much the same, or maybe even better than the 356mm on the Marlborough. The difference being that the Azuma loads in 13 seconds, whereas that thing takes 19.5. All right then, so what do we have? Well, we have a battleship cruiser thing with mediocre armor, as is typical for the British line in game, with lots of guns, with a curious precise aiming skill. Why is that curious? Well, let me show you something. Let's have a look at tier 7 at the Hood. The Hood gets the precise aiming 2. What's the difference? The precise aiming 2 increases accuracy by 35%. The Vanguard at tier 8 gets a precise aiming 2. The Thunderer at tier 10 gets a precise aiming 2. The Marlborough at tier 9, for reasons, gets precise aiming 1, which only does 25% accuracy increase. Now 25% is still pretty good, so you shrink the dispersion ellipsis by a quarter. That's not terrible, but well, it's why? Anyway, you get to choose between fire and flooding resistance, which you don't have any, and since these are not percentage points, you may as well not bother, and main battery reload and turret traverse, which you don't also have the turret traverse, so that is a much welcome increase. You can, if you look at the equipment, sort of try to think of a couple of ways of playing the ship. Now, you could be tempted to play with the main battery mod 3, because the dispersion is a bit meh on this ship, especially at long range. The shells are pretty slow, and that is actually fascinatingly historically accurate, because after the slight tangent again, sorry, we're scattering the history section all over the place this time. The British with the Nelsons were experimenting with higher velocity shells, and that kind of didn't really work that well. And they went back to, with the King George V, with these guns, they went back to the lower caliber and slower shells, but heavier shells, with larger bursting charges. And she was actually able to do a fair amount of damage to targets. These guns performed pretty well for their relatively small caliber. So you've got slow shells, you don't have the greatest dispersion at range. It's a 7% increase, it's nice, but you have a 4%, a 4 degrees per second turret traverse. I think the main battery mod 1 is in order here, in order to just try to keep these turrets on target, even on the slightest turn. I would recommend propulsion, because you don't have any fire and flooding resistance to boost anyway. You could maybe go with a deck protection mod, but you're also not the most well armored ship out there. So let's just put these two into perspective here. Let's go tier 9 and 7. This thing is quite a bit chunkier than the King George. I mean, the King George is not a small ship, but that thing is just like the Lion. It's even bigger than the Lion, honestly. So definitely a large ship, and you kind of need to get away from things on occasion and play at long range. So propulsion it is. Third slot is interesting, because you could be very tempted and say, let's put the concealment mod in there. And yes, you could do that, and you could get a battleship with an under 10-second concealment. And that sort of is the thing that I did with the Kearsarge. Did I do that with the Kearsarge? I think I did that with the Kearsarge. Let's have a quick look. Tier 9, Kearsarge. Yes, that's what I did with the Kearsarge. That was a concealment build. And that made sense, because the Kearsarge has had great range, and you would really just play sort of baseline and use your range. The Marlborough does not have great range, so you could still use the concealment mod in slot 3 for getting into position and maybe trying to disengage, And it's a valid tactic, but I find myself needing to use these guns constantly in order to do damage, because the guns are not great. These are worse than the tier 7 guns on the KGV. So you need to keep them firing if you want to rack up any meaningful amount of damage. And if you keep them firing, your concealment doesn't matter. So it really only matters in the first minute of the game or so, and then for the rest of the battle it does not, which is why I've been sticking here with the more canonical build of the steering gear mod. Because that actually gets your turn time down to 11.7 seconds, which isn't quite Vanguard levels, I believe, but is still pretty okay for a battleship at tier 9. And you sort of need it to maneuver yourself out of problems. She doesn't have a really decent amount of hit points to play with, but you still can't stand your ground and tank anything. Historical camo gets us, where was it here? Gets us hit points, range, dispersion, and torpedo damage reduction. Standard stuff. The range. The range is probably the one reason. Dispersion 4%, nice. It all adds up, but the range is kind of her problem really, because she needs to get uncomfortably close to things. So you don't want to be necessarily the first in line in one of these things, but you want to be behind your team in order to give the enemy team something else to shoot at and lob shells from there. So range is always good. Also, the commander setup's obviously different from the tech tree line, and it's the skill set is sort of sufficiently different from the other premiums. It might work for some to share the commander, but you could get an additional sonar. I don't find I need it particularly often, because I don't play this ship in a way that I would, get into dogfights with destroyers. You could say, and let's look at these numbers again. You could say, oh, yes, Terry, but this is a British battleship and she's got 16 guns. Yes, if you were able to get them on target, that is. Even at mid-range, getting more than 5 or 6 hits in with these guns on a destroyer is a hard task. So you could, kite away, and she's still dangerous against destroyers, but it's not something like... She's nowhere near as dangerous as something like a Lepanto. So I don't really use the Hydra all that often. The rest is kind of standard setup. You could go for an additional precise aim. I personally, given that she has a large hit point pool, would rather go with Survivalist here and make your heals a bit better. She doesn't get the extra heal that you get, I think, on the Thunderer, but she has a very decent amount of hit points to play with, so you can make your heals more effective and deal with that longer. Exploit weakness is an absolute must, because the armor piercing on these guns is a bit crap. And you're really going to be firing HE, but the HE is also crap. It's worse than tier 7, so every extra little bit of damage that you can get out of this is really good. Other than that, not really many surprises. Extinguisher, because your damage control on ship is pretty much non-existent. Demo Expert, because you do want to trigger Damcons if you can. And Marksman, obviously. Tier 10 doesn't really matter an awful lot. On a Seeker, you could get compartment maintenance. I don't think the IFHE would make an awful lot of difference, but I haven't tested it. The HE doesn't do an awful lot of damage to begin with. It's under 1,000 per shell. These shells are relatively weak, and I really see this more as an HE spammer. You could take it. I would use the armor piercing against cruisers, but even against cruisers, unless you're firing at point blank range, it's kind of weak. So APCS might change that a bit. It might be viable to target enemy ship weak spots potentially, but you can't do that at range because half your shells are going to land in a different postcode. So tricky call. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. I would maybe go with the IFHE and just get a little bit more full pens. But even though you're going to get full pens at long range, you're going to do, what, 600, 700 damage? It's not an awful lot. The main damage income on this ship is just by rate of fire and by fires. Anyway, enough talking, let's get into some gameplay. The first battle is a bit odd, because we're playing a tier 9 game on Golden Channel. You don't often see Golden Channel in these tiers. And we are up against Minnesota, a Freddy, a Bismarck, a Black Bismarck, a Hipper, and an Udaloy. Okay, let's go and do that. What do you want to do in this ship? You want to mostly, well, like you would in other British battleships, play a bit position, but try to set fires. And this thing is no exception, because you just don't have the damage output to take anything else on otherwise. You just can't damage them quickly enough. You need to rely on damage over time. So we're going to head over to the capture circle, because we would like to be in the capture circle. Thank you very much. And if that Donskoy could just do something about the enemy destroyer, that would be much appreciated, because I think the other cruiser on our team was a bot. So can't really remember. I think it was a bot, but yeah, it looks like the Donskoy does not want to be anywhere near the capture circle. So I'm just going to park myself in my favorite position there, next to that little ledge, and see what we're going to be doing about this. Now this is where the concealment build kind of comes in. You could get a little closer without being spotted, but then why would you? Because you need to start shooting, because you need to start doing damage. Now against cruisers, you can sort of use the armor piercing, but oh, there's the Udaloy. Okay, Udaloy's been spotted and he's sort of sitting still there. So let's see if we can punish him a little bit for that. Precise aim out, shots out, and then we get just the nose into the capture circle. See how many? Yeah, that was 7 hits on target, and that was like a third of the Udaloy gone. So he definitely felt that one. But he's still in a gun battle with that bot over there, and we'll try to get a second shot on target, but don't have an awful lot of hopes. Might want to start farming the enemy battleships, because now we're going to come under fire. There is the Freddy. So Freddy's on fire. Very important to keep an eye. Freddy damage controls the single fire. So now we wait, and by the time my shells actually get there, his damage control should be no longer active. So. There comes some Freddy shots, yeah, those hurt. And yeah, you see the HE does no damage at all. And no bad luck, no fires. I mean, it's only a 13% fire chance. It's not as great as on the bigger shells, obviously. But apologies for the noise outside. Somebody is, I don't know what they're doing, lawn mowing or whatnot. That's triple perma-fire on the Freddy. So there you go. That means we can leave the Freddy to slowly cook. And we get back to that in a minute, but now we have a Minnesota. I would love to take the Bismarck on, but Minnesota is presenting himself and has also got some torpedoes coming in. And there's the Udaloy again. Okay, no fires on the Minnesota. Udaloy has run out of smoke and is still sitting still in one position, occasionally lobbing torpedoes my way. Yep, there they come. Yeah, I don't think you have got range, Sunshine. Precise aim up. Let's see if we can punish him again. The Freddy, meanwhile, seems to have burned pretty well. Do we need to kill this thing, or is someone else going to take it out? Meanwhile, the Donskoy has found himself a position. I'll call it a position. Okay, one salvo and Ash is dead already. Okay, Lepanto takes out the Freddy. We've got Bismarck to shoot at. Bismarck's burn. And that Udaloy is still sitting there. But he's also not making any attempts to coming any closer. So it's a double fire on the Bismarck and a fire on the Minnesota. Now, Bismarck should be easier to set on fire. And the Minnesota is not damaconing. No, he is. Okay. But we'll take on the Bismarck. Minnesota should probably have a bit better fire resistance than that thing, so let's see if we can get some fire set. Nope, no luck. And let's heal up again. The Udaloy has found an interest in us and is peppering us with high explosive shells from his little smoke screen. That's cute, he can stay there, I don't care. I've got Bismarcks to cook, so shots out, and let's see if we can get some better luck. Nope, no fires, and 7 hits on target out of 16 is on a fully broadsiding target at 12 kilometers. Could have been worse, could have been better. There comes some Udaloy torps. That's what you kind of can use the hydro for these sort of things, but it's not universally useful. Anyway, my team is not in the capture circle, and I would like to be in the capture circle. Maybe we can get a fire on the Bismarck. Wouldn't that be swell? No, hang on, there's the Udaloy, and that Bismarck didn't seem to be burning, so let's try if we can hit the Udaloy again, and we'll shoot at the Black Bismarck instead. It's, you know, Bismarck's Bismarck. That's a module damage. And on the Udaloy and the fire on the Bismarck, he damage constant single fire. You're starting to see a theme developing here, right? And that means, well, the Udaloy is gonna detect it, but you know, the Bismarck isn't. so he's damage control the fire, and that's one perma-fire. Let's see if we can get another one set. Nope, but that's one perma-fire for now. Let's see if we can get the if we can get the capture circle back. And I think the Donskoy has come out after from his hiding place over there. No more fires. Come on, give me another fire. I deserve one, don't I? Nope, no luck. Okay, the Udaloy is changing positions because he no longer wants to sit there. But that's okay. I don't. The Donskoy can take care of that thing. Make himself useful. Okay, there's a fire. These were the Udaloy torpedoes. Didn't need no hydro to know that these were coming after he's been changing. And I am getting shot at by the Bismarcks, and they're doing a decent amount of damage. But at this range, I sort of can hold with the armor. We've recaptured the thing, and that Bismarck is sitting there broadside on. I don't know what it is with Bismarck players. You do realize you do need to be a little bit more aggressive with these things, right? Because it's all about your secondaries. Okay, that's a fire on the Bismarck. Damacon, Damacon. Okay, so 10 seconds, and then... So let's get the first salvo out at that low health black Bismarck over there, and then we can use the rear turrets to shoot at the other Bismarck, who is... well, to his defense, who is going defensive against everything else, and I mean they don't stand a chance anymore. So that's a perma-fire on that. Why is that black Bismarck still alive? Oh, it's the minuscule damage output of these HE shells. Didn't want to switch. Let's give another try. Let's see if we can kill him now. Nope. Because these shells really just tickle. Okay, now he's dead. And that just leaves the Bismarck over there, which means he's burning merrily, and then we're just gonna go. Yeah, this is the one way how you can sort of be successful in this ship. Stay back and try to set fires and try to synergize with your team and see who else is HE spamming on your team, and see if you can get some fires out. But we've done 104,000 points of damage all in all. Now let's see how much of that is down to fires. None of these players were bots, right? I mean, there was a bot, but I haven't really shot at it as far as I remember, or not done that much fire damage to it. So let's see how much we were racking up in terms of fire damage from this whole exercise. And I mean, 104,000 isn't bad for a tier 9 battleship. Yeah, we've done 30,000 points of fire damage, 13 fires out of 130 shots. It's a bit under the 13%. It's more like 10%, but relatively low RNG. Let's go again, because the second game is, well, I would say it's technically a tier 10 game, but it's only a 4v4, thanks matchmaking. We're up against Iowa, an enemy Marlborough, a Worcester, and an Ibuki. And it is epicenter on chain. What do you do in an epicenter map? Well, you can still park yourself in the outer ring and just pepper things with high explosive shells, right? Especially if there's a fair amount of bots out there. And if these people could stop mowing the lawn on there, that'd be really great, because I'm trying to make videos here for YouTube. Sod it. Thank you. That worked, actually. Alright, nope, it didn't. Okay, there we go. Into the capture circle. We've got a Zao on our team, and it's relatively bot heavy, so people will just... What are you... Oh dear, oh dear. Oh well. At least he's not firing his guns to get himself detected in one of the sneakiest cruisers out there. Oh, never mind. You people are special, aren't you? Okay, off we go next to that little island there, because that way we can sit between the outer circle and the middle circle, and at least do some assistance in terms of capture progress. And we can, you know, lob high explosive shells at enemy ships at long range, which is kind of what we're here for. Unless, you know, situations warrant something else, but most of the time this is kind of how you're going to be playing this game. So, let's see if we get anything spotted. There is a battleship over there, but it's not quite in range yet. It's probably one of the bots, because they yeah, it's the bot Monty. I mean, what can we do? We're still going to get a couple of shots out. He is turning. Let's see. I don't know if that's going to hit or not. We've got better things to shoot at. There is a Worcester. And these have missed, yeah. There's Worcester. Tarkov can take that thing out. There's an Iowa over there. And you can argue that shooting at bots is technically not the right thing to do. It depends. Bots can actually be quite annoying, especially when it comes to setting fires. But of course, I'm not getting any fires. When it comes to setting fires and then getting players to damage control. But yeah, if I have the option, I'd rather shoot at the Worcester. Now at this range, you could argue, oh, why are you not using the armor piercing? Because honestly, the armor piercing isn't gonna do jack all, even at this range. So and yeah, the dispersion is questionable occasionally. So that did not do an awful lot, but Worcester is kind of sitting still there, but now he's no longer, and I can't really get range on that other thing, whatever that is back there. Bot Iowa is about to... Oh, that's the enemy Marlborough, okay. Marlborough, really? So I've got Ibuki back there. I'm not sure what he's doing all the way outside, but I mean, he's a torpedo cruiser. Anyway, let's move, because we are 2 kills ahead. And these are probably the bots, because the team seems to be holding back a little bit and waiting until the bots have exhausted themselves. Marlborough is not Damaconing a single fire, so he's not completely without experience. Let's see if we can entice him to do a bit more. No, and he gets out of range, and then at that point... Alright, yeah, we haven't done an awful lot yet, but we are leading in points because we are holding the center cup, because nobody else, literally, we've got a Holland who's doing that, and nobody else seems to be interested to get into the center cup. The Worcester does not look like he's interested in doing something about the Holland, so we'll just go and farm a little bit, trying to get fire on the Marlborough, not really happening. There's also an Iowa. Okay, Worcester was still focusing one of the bots down. So now we're 4-4, but because we've been holding the center cup and the enemy team is making no attempts whatsoever to do something about it, we are leading on points. So we're full health. We haven't really been shot at by anything, and there's a Worcester coming. Now, Worcester, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, I only have 356mm guns, but I can load the armor piercing if I need to. So let's loop around this island. We've got fire on the Worcester, and yeah, I mean, he could really just even let it burn, but he is letting it burn. Yeah, Worcester is not stupid. He knows how fires work. Can I get reloaded before he gets behind the island? Not quite. My shells are so slow they would have been hitting the island. So let's wait. He's turning away. Shots out at that thing behind the island. But yeah, we literally got 1 hit on target. And we are getting shot at by something on the other end. But we are holding the center of the map, so we're good on points anyway. So now we can just, you know, make sure that this extremely defensive bubble of enemy ships there is not doing anything fancy. Okay, Worcester. We do have a destroyer out there, so let's see if we can get rid of that thing. I've got the armor piercing loaded, and let's see what we can do with the AP. Fully broadsiding Worcester, 7 kilometers. Yeah, that looked a little better, didn't it? That one hurt. Let's do that again, and that should be an ex-Worcester. He's just out of secondary range, but he isn't even looking at me, so... Yeah, he's got other things to do. He's trying to farm the taco by the looks of it. Okay, that should be a dead Worcester. No, it isn't. Really? Really? Okay, he can. Someone can kill this guy, right? Surely he's on 100 hit points. Someone can just kill that with a single shell. I'm not waiting for my guns to reload. But hello, Ibuki. Are you trying to get torpedoes away? Okay, now we're overkilling just to make sure that thing's really dead. Okay, Ibuki's dead. No torpedoes. Good. That leaves Marlborough and the Worcester is still alive. Are you kidding me? Okay. If you want to do it properly, do it yourself. Okay. Worcester fully broadsiding, 10 kilometers, and shots out. Now that should be a dead Worcester. Okay. Enemy Marlborough, and then we've just got the Iowa to kill. Marlborough's taking Holland out. Worcester is dead. They are holding the center cap, but we're so far ahead on points at this point that I don't think it matters. And we're just going to casually murder that Marlborough here, and that should be a dead Marlborough. Yes, it is, and that just leaves the Iowa. Are we going to get to shoot at that thing before the timer runs out? Because we're already at 950 points, but we're only holding 1 capture circle, so it's not too bad. Zhao is chasing him. Zhao's just been sailing around farming everything, I think, as one does in one of these things. Let's see if we can distract him a little bit. And shots out. Was he firing high HE at the Zhao? I'm not quite sure, but this might just be the secondaries, but he's dead and he's the last ship alive, and that's probably as much damage as we're going to be doing here. So let's talk about the Marlborough a little bit, and yeah, that's the kill. Didn't want to take that away from the Zhao, although he's probably done enough. Let's talk about the Marlborough a little bit, because I did review the Kearsarge not too long ago, and the Kearsarge was actually fun, and it was kind of similar in a way. But the Kearsarge is fun because long range, the guns actually hit harder, and she's got the dive bomber gimmick. The Marlborough really doesn't have any of this. I would say it's a very mediocre ship. The guns are worse than on the King George V. The only gimmick is that you've got 16 of them. The AP doesn't hit particularly hard, even against light cruisers. The HE doesn't do an awful lot of damage, but the fire chance is okay. And if you really want to have a decent game and a good damage number in this thing, you need to sort of play at long range and use your hit points, because you don't have an awful lot of armor, but you can use your hit points to a degree to tank, and just HE spam at long range, whatever that is in this ship. And see what you can get done with permafires. But that's sort of it. And honestly, that's something you can do in all the British ships. I don't think I've tested the Lion. I can't remember, but the Tech Tree ships work pretty much the same way, and you may as well use those. There's nothing really special that she brings to the table. The Precise Aim 1 doesn't make an awful lot of difference. The Dispersion is pretty scattershot out there, and yeah, I'd say it's a pretty mediocre ship. You can have good games in it, but it's not like anything special, anything unique, or like a special play that you can do in this thing. So that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and see you next time. Bye bye.